regards to I know based on conversation, we are roughly at about, 50% of estimation when it comes to the AML system. Is that accurate? What's the number now? Is it more?
The number is approximately 22 to 24%, depending on the week.
Okay, stop. That means somebody lied to me previously, because there have been several different numbers that have been given here. And the last set of numbers, we were told it was over 45%. So you're saying now it's gone backwards for a system you're saying is not working?
If I may clarify,
Okay, thanks.
With respect, Senator Heiliger, each month when we look at these, we're not lying. It may have been that weeks or that months or that average, but most recently we have had those.
So just for clarity.
Let me provide some clarity.
Just quick question. So depending on who comes before the body for a time period, month-wise, so at one point they tell us this system is so bad that money to rebuild it, and it has been increasing in the decreasing of accuracy. So the last set of numbers was almost 50%. Yeah. So now you're saying that it's improving?
No, hold on.
I'm very much confused.
Senator, so words matter, and so the question you asked was how much we're estimating, right? So there is a difference between what we're estimating versus the system, because even if the system fails, I can still go out and get a read. I don't have to necessarily estimate. But Ms. Marsh-Boltis is more familiar, and she can answer that more succinctly.
So in regards to the AMI system, you are correct where we did have to go to FEMA, and that's where we were able to get the prudent replacement project approved to replace this whole system, which is because the system continuously fails. So it's below 50% and it continues to decrease. What we have been doing is our team have been working diligently on trying to upkeep with, trying to replace as much meters as we can. We'll go at the different tower sites and make changes to the NCs, which are some of the equipment on the electrical side. But the AMI system itself is reading the MRR, which is the meter read rates, is going below 50% on an average. We've been trying to maintain as much as we can, which is why Mr. Director Knight mentioned purchasing meters so that we could try to do some manual reads and keep the mesh going on the system. But until we're able to get the full AMI project completed, which the RFP is going out hopefully October 1st, and it was approved by FEMA, so we have a path forward, we will be challenged internally by keeping the system maintained. So the meter reading rate and what they're actually manually reading is a little bit different. So that's where the misconception was.
So the AMI fails at about 48%, but we're still able to go out and get a manual read, and so we don't have to estimate 48% of the bills. Yeah.
So the system, my original statement is roughly correct, that the system is almost roughly failing at 50%, but you are manually trying to read them so that depending on the month, the rate is fluctuating.
That is a correct statement, Madam.
Well, I appreciate that clarity because I am one of those that has been inconsistently being estimated, where if you look at my bill, I'll print it out for you, where you could see on my bill every 2 months the same number shows up. Every other month the same identical bill shows up. So I'm fully aware I'm being estimated because the probabilities of you coming up with the same identical number 4 times in 1 year is kind of slim to none. So I want to know, especially with our public, how do you fix that? Because the public is getting a wrong message here. Because between the AML as well as what you guys are manually trying to do. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Heiliger.
To my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifiers. My first round of questions has to do with some information that has been put out here, but I want to know quickly about the meters that you said you guys have had to put in some manual ones. About how much money have you spent to put in these manual meters to help reduce estimating here in the territory?
I don't have a current figure. I'll try and get that figure for you.
Okay.
We have an order. I don't know what predates my time. I know there's an order that we've placed since I came on board.
Well, I'll wait for that specific number because I'm I want to know how much we're expending, because of course these things are going to be temporary if ultimately we're going to go to a whole new system. So I want to know how much we're spending on that. The second question I want to know is, you said you've had to get meter readers. If we're roughly at about 30% estimating, according to what you're saying, you've reduced it down to 28 point something percent. How many meter readers have you had to rehire to cover that, to understand how much to help reduce this estimation? How many meter readers have you had to rehire? Because we knew when the system went in, y'all went down to almost nothing.
Right. I don't know how many have been rehired.
Well,
since
just
the
hired,
system-
it could be shifted back, because I know some people got transferred to different departments. How many people have you put back as meter readers to help cover this estimating situation?
We probably have, we're probably not where we were at the peak. We're probably maybe 4 meter readers short in each district.
Well, get the number and tell me how much you have right now reading.
Okay,
Give me a
that
total.
I can do.
I want to speak to the chairman of the board, because I was listening to some dialogue that really concerned me earlier. And it seems that there's a huge disconnect between the executive director, who's also the CEO, Mr. Knight, and what is being said or not said to the board. So from what I'm understanding, you're saying that the executive director, who's also the chief executive officer, Mr. Knight, is on this incident command. Do you feel as a board he's relaying information to you in an accurate way, or to keep you guys updated? Because at some point we're going to come out of a state of emergency, and you guys would have to ultimately take back over to continue whatever work is being done. Do you think that you're getting accurate information or up-to-date information? Does the board feel that they're in the loop with understanding what's happening?
So let me say this. Every month we get an executive director's report. There's no distinction in his report, and I think it's only one report we've gotten so far, as to what we get from his communication incident command and what we get from him.
So again, do you think the information that is being relayed to you is accurate or up to date, or what is needed in regards to potentially transitioning out of a state of emergency from this incident command to what the board, who actually is supposed to be running this utility, needs to know to fully operate it and continue this job once we come out of the state of emergency?
I'm comfortable with Executive Director Knight's information that he gives to us, so I don't question what he brings to us as
Okay.
a board.
So you're comfortable with
I'm
it?
very comfortable with it.
That's all I need to know. The other question I want to find out has to do with the state of emergency. When you said earlier that you're still doing disconnections, if we're smack dead in a state of emergency, is that normal, or is that, I'm confused, because I always remembered every time we were at these levels, disconnections were suspended. So when I hear that it's being done still, that part threw me for a loop. Could you explain that a little bit?
So traditionally, when we've called state of emergencies, they've been for disasters. And when we had Tropical Storm Ernesto, we did stop disconnections for the week,
Okay.
starting the day before the storm hit. However, this is a fiscal state of emergency that we're discussing. And part of that is
2
I do
minutes.
need to hold customers accountable. And to the extent that they've run up arrearages, I do need to have a mechanism by which I can force payment.
What mechanism do you have in place for estimations? Like, how do you keep track of them to know that, okay, this is X amount? Who does that?
Sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
what do you utilize as a mechanism to track estimations, to get the numbers, to know how many people are being estimated, and maybe why? Do you keep track of all that information?
Lorraine Kelly, Interim Chief Financial Officer, yes, we do. We have a report every day that comes out that details all of the billings, whether it was estimated by the system, whether it was estimated by manually. We have separate subcategories that detail, that's put into the system by the edit clerks when they're doing that estimation as to the reasons. And we do track that, yes.
With the AML system, when I read the article where they shared that FEMA, I think it's $138 million they're willing to assist us with. I remember years ago, the previous system was like 14 or 15 million. That's almost like tenfold, 10 times the cost amount. So that actually started me to question, how does a system that was supposed to be so accurate for this population cost 10 times more than what the original one cost? And where did these numbers come up to even potentially offer to suggest to FEMA? Because I like to look at numbers and I get confused when I see such a huge disparity from 14 million to almost 150 million. That's a big jump.
Time.
So, Senator, we're here in full transparency, but I regret putting that that number out there in the public. It is a comfortable level of funding, but
Okay.
Ms. Marsh Boltes can speak to the specifics of how we arrive at the number.
Okay.
Shavanti Marsh Boltes, Director of Project Management. So that number includes all of the mitigation efforts for hardening as well. So it's not only just the meters. If you recall, the last system was a full AMI system, but a lot has changed, especially after COVID, like the cost for electrical meters, the cost for poles, the cost for, you also need transformers, it depends on the equipment that's going to be purchased. So once the RFP goes out and the technology is chosen, this estimate is based on all of the hardening efforts that need to happen. Everything. So like
Okay.
poles, fiber, buildings for the towers, different things like that are also included to ensure FEMA doesn't want us to come back. We also don't want to come back either. So we're
I don't want
hoping
you
to
to
have
come back
a
either.
system that is fully functional, that can take all the storms needed, and also the best technology for where we are right now.
And we
Okay.
didn't start there. We've negotiated with them quite a bit to get to that point. That wasn't what the original offer on the table was.
Okay. Well,
And to answer your question, we have 12 meter readers, 6 in each district, plus a chief. I think we're about 2 short. We ideally would like to be at 8 in each district.
okay. And last question, since you shared, so you said it's roughly like 12 meter readers.
Yeah.
What is the total amount of electrical clients we have? So I could get what that rough 30 percentage that these 12 meter readers have to cover.
55,000? Is that
So,
electric and water? That's electric and water. Yeah, 55,000.
okay, well, let's talk about electrical quick. Give me the electrical side.
Senator, your time was called.
Oh, I heard something.
It was time. But I'll let you wrap up.
Just give me that number and I will happily relinquish. my time.
1-3. So 55,000 electric, and Mr. Hodge is telling me about 13,000 water.
Okay, so 10%, 10%. So these 12 people roughly cover about 17,000 people a month?
Yes, ma'am. It's quite a task. That's why we need to move to automatic metering. We don't want to go backwards, and it's going to be going backwards to now have to staff up again to be able to read everything manually when technology is supposed to have made that a one-day process. So we are caught between two worlds, going backwards to when we used to have a workforce that can read every meter within 30 days, and having a system that can kind of automate that. So we're only going out to read those meters that had errors or were flagged for some reason. That's our challenge right now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Question, I just needed some clarity. During the line of questioning for my colleague who was previous before the Senate president. I just need to understand one thing. The chairman of the board stated that he's not aware of a lot of things that are in the report, but then he also said he's satisfied with the report that you, as the executive director, Carl Knight, turns over to the board. And if you are on the incident command, wouldn't all of those things that he's saying he's not fully aware of, wouldn't those things be in the report to make sure that the board is up to date and understanding what the incident command is doing? Because the message I'm hearing here is two completely different things. That he's satisfied with your report, but he's also saying he don't know half of the stuff that my colleague was talking about. So what exactly is in your report that he's satisfied with, but somehow is missing all of this pertinent information?
So, Senator, we submit a monthly operational report to the board.
Yes.
We provide a whole overview of our operations, every aspect of our operations. Every one of my senior reports, all 9 of them, produce a monthly report that ultimately gets rolled up and sent to the board. I then add a verbal summation of that. I did it once. I've only been to 1 board meeting so far. I've only been here 5 weeks. The report that came out last night, I haven't even reviewed the final report myself. We did contribute to the crafting of the report. I am familiar with the highlights of it, but we haven't had a chance. I don't know if there's anything in there that we need to distill to the board chair. The other report predates my time in the seat. So, I mean, there's no inconsistency with what we're saying.
Exactly. Let me help you understand this,
Yes.
right? There is no distinction between what comes from incident command and executive director's report, which we will address when we speak to him. So he gives us a report, overall
Just
report.
an overall general
That's
report.
correct. In terms of incident command, I don't even know who sits on incident command.
Oh, wow. And you see, this is a
But it's the truth.
major problem because we are in a state of emergency that has allowed this incident command to take over WAPA and do the job of the board. And a board member who is the chief, who controls the board, is basically telling us he doesn't know what the heck is going on. This is weird. I don't even know how else to say it. So how are we legitimately trying to clean up this problem if the board who's responsible to run WAPA is basically saying, we just get a general report. We have no clue specifically what this incident command is doing, and their entire job is charged with getting us through this state of emergency. So this is a whole clashing and no kind of coordination situation that's happening here. And I think that's what's additionally going to fail the people. This is a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
I know that we've had this debate for this line of credit dealing with FEMA funds, and I know you guys just are potentially getting, you said $138 million. And do you have to come up with matching funds for that? Or is it a straight up grant, or does the government have to come up?
There are matching funds right now.
How much?
It's 2%.
For that
am I
particular
correct?
project?
For that project, it's a 2% match that we have to come up with.
Do we have the money, or how are you gonna find it? Or can you utilize the $100 million line of credit, or is that separate for previous things?
So I don't have a $100 million line of credit, but the
No, not you.
Oh.
There's a $100 million
yes.
line of credit that we created last year
Yeah.
to deal with FEMA matching
So
funds
we-
for matching funds. Can you guys tap into that? Or do you have to come up with another source based on you saying there's a 2% matching request?
So the primary source is probably going to be the HUD CDBG funds that was set aside for match,
Okay.
for disaster recovery projects. The line of credit is being used for reimbursable expenses so that they would front costs that they know ultimately FEMA will reimburse. That's how we pay back the line.
Okay. The other question I want to ask in regards to transformers, I know they're very expensive. Last one I remember somebody purchased privately was about $30,000+ for one. So I know the cost. What I want to know in regards to that is, we speak about preventative measures, and when these transformers go out and it causes a lot of issues with having to repurchase and, manufacturing. What I want to know specifically is, how do we get around dealing with the maintenance part? Because I've seen a lot of growth of trees and all these things around some of these transformers. And I know you guys were saying you don't have enough money to do certain things, but to prevent a major issue, finding 2 or 3 people to keep up with creating a crew to keep cutting around these things, it's a preventative measure, and it's way cheaper than ultimately having to buy these new transformers if anything happens. What's going on around maintaining, especially around the transmitters with overgrown trees and stuff that grow around them?
So there are various reasons why transformers fail. But specifically to your question on vegetation, what we call vegetation
Yes.
management, tree trimming, I do feel it's a worthwhile investment to invest in a crew
Yeah.
that year-round can help keep trees and vegetation under control. So yes, I do think I haven't done the official cost-benefit analysis, but my logic tells me
you
that
have
that's...
a bucket truck and you have 2 or 3 people maintaining that every day. That's way cheaper than them blowing out and you having to figure out how to get them back. So I'm looking at ways to potentially mitigate bigger problems if we could focus on the smaller ones.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. It's my time. Okay, well, I'm just going to quickly wrap up. I really do appreciate the conversations that I had here today, but as a people, we are really struggling with WAPA. And I think at the end of the day, as representatives, we want what is best for the people. But I think overall, there needs to be a much better concerted effort working with the board, as well as whatever is happening with this task force that's been set up dealing with this state of emergency. Because ultimately, when it's finished, everything would have to be transitioned fully back over to the board for management. And like you said, they're technically your boss. And if your boss doesn't even know what's happening, I think that's a major problem, at least from me on the outside looking in. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. They're not technically, they are my boss.
Yeah.
And
Well, how it was going on, it didn't sound that way. It sounded like a whole lot of disconnect earlier. So for me, as a person on the outside looking in, I'm scratching my head like, I'm hearing technically the boss saying they don't know a lot of stuff that's happening, especially with them being in a state of emergency and having a lot of havoc being wreaked on the community. And I think it's important that that board should be up to date with as much information as possible in order to continue the reins and knowing exactly what needs to be done when we come out of the state of emergency.
Thank you very much, Senator Alma Francis.
You're welcome.
Eiliger?
When she was referencing dealing with contracts going to the board, I know we're in a state of emergency, but I still want to make sure, is it still a situation of all contracts that are still going to the board to be approved, or is any of them being dealt with the instance committee? How does it?
The incident command, the emergency response, ICS, I mean, that's a thing that we all need to be familiar with. But
Yes.
the short answer is, nothing has changed as far as board approvals. Everything goes before the board.
Okay.
What's within my approval authority, I can approve, and everything else above that, I think 750,000 must go to the board. Nothing has changed since the state of emergency.
So anything below that, you can approve on your own?
Between me and the staff. So there's different various
Okay.
levels of staff approvals.
And
once
750 and above will go to the board, and
Yes, ma'am.
that has not changed.
that hasn't changed.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator